That wasn't convincing at all.
That's
I'm like,
It was not supposed to be.
least convincing
fake
charade.
start. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, how's everybody doing? It's oh, I feel like my eyes are like really mad. I hate looking at myself in there. Whoa.
It's okay. We hate looking at you as well.
Oh. Anyway, I feel like something's going on with my eyes suddenly now that I'm on camera. Anyway, welcome back. We haven't. It's been a while since we had Mark here. It seems like it's been like forever. Actually, the last dev stream was something.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to be.
We were lost without you.
You're lost.
Well, I think it's good for things to feel like we're back in the thick of things, right? No.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So.
We've actually got a few things to share today, and we've been kind of deep in the trench. Like, at least I can speak for myself. I've been sort of deep in the trenches working on stuff that's super secret. So we'll have more to share.
Yeah, I think about
future.
A bit more than half the Foxhole team is working on summer update stuff. I think more than half, and then say like 2/3 is a safe bet, and then 1/3 is continuing to work on present day things. Because update 26, we're not going to talk about it yet, but that's the one to look out for this year. You know what I mean? Like,
when you said summer update, the first thing that came to mind is that like all the other people are like finding on like speedos and bikinis and stuff like that.
right.
No, that's not what it is.
We're adding beaches to the game.
Relic jet skis.
That would be so good.
Relic speedos.
Relic
water guns.
What is a relic speedo? Like just naked?
Wow.
Anyway.
Ask Julian the concept art. Make some relic speedos, Julian.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, getting off that train wreck, let's get into some business. How was GDC, Mark? Now that you can actually talk to us without like a horrible delay and like stuttering.
It's good. It was it's always, ever since we started working on Foxhole, it's been really fun going to GDC because there's more things for us to participate in. So it was a very productive trip, and I think that Foxhole is still in the foreseeable future. Obviously, is going to be a big part of our future in the next like year or 2, 3 years. So my goal at GDC basically is to talk to the right people about how to make sure that we can actually reach our goals with Foxhole, right? That path is set, and we can sort of be like, hey, this we have like a business plan on top of just making the game, right? Because there's this whole other really boring side to this whole thing, which is like running a business,
actually having to deal with like taxes and make sure that people are employed and have like follow the law and stuff like that.
Actually following the law and like paying for things and making sure you have a good place to sell your games and that you are selling your games and all this business side stuff that we have to take care of. But the good thing is that like sort of to summarize is that like Foxhole is in a very healthy place, both as a game and as a business, right? Which is the dark side that we don't ever really much want to talk about. But as a business, it's extremely healthy. So that all means very good things to come in the future. And I'm always appreciative of like people who, I get messages all the time like, oh, are you sure you don't want to start like a Patreon or like sell some skins so that we can help you out, because we're really worried about you guys. But it's it's like, thank you for worrying, we really appreciate it, but I think we're fine, right?
Also, there's another thing, like sometimes people forget that people contact me about that again. It's like, oh, how can I donate money, or why don't you start doing X and Y to sell more so that we can hire more developers? And it's like, it's true that more money also means more developers, but also sometimes like doing a Patreon or Kickstarter or anything like that, it's a lot of work. And talking to other developers that did particularly these crowdfunding systems to help them develop the game, like I would say the 90% of them when they talk to us is like, yeah, be very careful because it's great,
Yeah.
but it is way more work than you expect.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have to divert a lot of your energy also to just dealing with that sort of
Yeah.
funding, and which is different than just technically for us just selling the game,
Yeah.
so that we can pay developers to be here and to
That's right.
do
Yeah.
our thing, right?
Furthermore, if you want to support us financially, buy copies of Foxhole for your friends. We got another game. We got Fortified. There are ways that you can throw money our way if you really want to.
Or if you want to drop by like a suitcase of cash, I'm fine with that too, right?
Let's make sure the bills are unmarked.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, let's get on to.
On that note, let's move on.
Let's move on to
Before we break the law that we're about to follow.
community highlights. You might have vowed, but
Okay, so let's go community highlights. KFC once again is gathering up all the cool stuff that the community has done in the past 2 weeks, and is gonna be posted on a blog post coming up soon. But we have the community highlights snippets. That's just like a little preview of what is in the blog post. First thing that I thought would be really cool is that this image by Superior. Superior for the past, I don't know, months and months have been doing some amazing stuff, like these scenes of war. And this one particularly struck a chord with me because it's not a combat scene. It's not them riding tanks and storming. No, it's like one scenario that we don't have much in our game right now, in which like people are leisurely like enjoying their time, and then you can like as a solo player do an incursion and kill like 2 of them or something like that. Or even cooler, if that guy poisoned their cups, which is a feature that we definitely don't have in our game because we don't have eating or food.
Right.
But I thought it was a really cool idea.
That'd be cool if
survival update.
if like you can poison the well, the old one at Fisherman's Row.
Yeah.
And all the soldier supplies just
Like there's a
turn
timer.
green. Yeah. Or if you spawn with them, you have a limited like your life is limited to like 3 minutes. If you don't
If you
what
don't
need
get
to do in
like
3
an
minutes, you just
antidote.
die.
For some reason, you don't start with a pistol either.
Yeah. Too weak to grab a pistol.
I know. So yeah, I thought this was really cool. Some more stuff. Bayonet, I think that's how you pronounce the name. It's another newspaper, The Warden's Voice. We already have the Legions. We have the other Warden newspapers, and this I think it's a new one, and it's actually pretty cool. This one has like already 5 pages. The Colonial newspaper is gonna be on the blog as well, which is really cool. But I thought it was interesting that like they really are proliferating, and I know you particularly like them, Mark, like the newspaper style of relating how the war happened and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I've always liked them a lot. Is there the full text behind, or is this just like a visual?
No. I placed it that way just to show that there were several pages.
Yeah.
But no, each page is gonna be on the community highlights blog post, and you can read each one of them.
Cool. No, it's really awesome.
Yeah, no, it's quite neat. And to the right there, from Malaran, we have some pretty cool tank concepts actually.
You mean train concept?
If we ever,
I'd say Logi concepts is what I'm seeing here, right?
I don't know.
They all
It
look
looks
like
like
train cars to me.
They are train cars, but
and some sort of crane.
yeah, but they are on train cars.
Fair enough.
So tanks on train cars.
And there's
That's what
a
everybody
Oh,
wants.
it's an armored car.
Yeah.
Literally an armored car, one of the train cars.
in
I was looking at the top. The top one has 2 tracks on it.
Yeah,
Two
but
tracks.
this is a transport, right?
The bottom one is a trank.
As a train, yes.
Okay.
It's a transport. I think the way it is like there's a transport one on the top left, On the middle left
Logi.
is a Logi car, and the bottom left is like
Probably a
a
defensive.
defensive
thing,
car or something like that, or a battle car of some sort. And then of course on the top right you have the one that another Logi one, or maybe a troops transport, and then the
Yeah.
two different locomotives on the bottom right, on bottom and middle right, the colonial and the war one.
Ah, okay, I see. At first, I thought that middle one that was some sort of like mobile HQ thing, but I see now that
Yeah, I think
it's
that's
locomotive. Yeah,
yeah, the two different ones from
with the
colonial.
mailbox.
With the mailbox
visuals
look
intact.
for the wardens.
This is really cool. I wonder what it was made in.
I think this is just like an Illustrator kind of.
SketchUp or?
No, I don't think it's 3D.
Oh, okay.
Could be
I mean,
SketchUp.
that's really good
And
perspective.
like
then.
drawn or something, but
It could be. I
who
could be
knows?
wrong.
I mean,
just be hand-
either way, it looks great.
I think it's hand drawn.
Yeah.
But on something like Illustrator, it looks to me like something like that.
Looks really cool.
Yeah, it's quite neat.
Gets me excited about Logi changes in the future.
And last but not least, some cool different art that is coming up. Janice, she or he did this really sweet watercolored concept for a new storm rifle. And it might be a little bit harder to see on the stream, but if you look at the picture on the blog post, you can see that it's like hand painted, or watercolor hand painted.
my favorite thing is the Wildwood ammo.
The wood one?
It says Wildwood ammo.
Yeah.
I like little details like that. Keep doing it.
Yeah, and on the right we have two characters of the lore.
Yeah, so one on the top right is Cormac McCarthy, who's the designer of the Flood, or Cormac McCarthy. Geez, that's an author. Cormac Flood, who's the designer of the Flood battle tank. And then the bottom one is the I don't know if he has a name, but he is the
engineer from Demorg?
The engineer from Demorg, yeah.
I got it.
Yeah, you did.
Nice.
Who designed the hatchet?
That's really cool.
That's some pretty cool
Deep dive
lore.
war stuff.
Yeah.
And this is like when people started drawing like the soldiers and the battles when we first started the project. It was already impressive. Now that people are going like as deep in the lore as they can to find like those one characters, like those names, and put face to those names, that is even more impressive in my opinion.
Yeah, I really like the attention. So like this is like a small thing, but I like the attention to detail between like the two different guys. Like Cormac Flood was described as like, you know, sort of like celebrated designer, like engineer, like not like a hands-on engineer as much as he's like a designer who's sort of got this sort of pompous attitude, because there's actually a quote from him in the lower piece that comes from, and so this guy looks very like political. He looks very like uppity.
Yeah.
Whereas like the other one seemed like, I wrote it like with the intention that
He was
supposed
going to be like a hands-on
kind
guy.
of like a grease monkey type character, and that's exactly what we got. So I think that's really interesting.
That's really cool.
I particularly like Flood's mustache. I think that's canon now.
Nice.
Oh, well, there you go. The
There you
first
go.
fan fiction that has turned canon. You know, you guys broke Matt eventually. That's great.
It's
Right?
first time I think.
Yeah.
Lightning's End was never gonna happen, but at least we have like a confirmed mustache.
Lightning's End. There's a chance. There's hope.
Cool.
Lightning's End is already in the game. He just doesn't know it yet.
That's amazing. So anyway, guys, if you have a blog post, like a post or anything like that from the that you did, like any images or music or journals or letters that you wrote or anything like that, we try to compile them on and put it on this blog post every 2 weeks. KFC is the one that does that. So if you want to be included if you have done things that you thought should be cool to be included and you haven't, talk to KFC, tag him on Discord in regards with your art. And because this is just a little preview of what's the blog post to come. And anybody can enter, do something cool. It doesn't matter what it is. Cool. And now,
All right.
to the development update.
What everybody's been waiting for, because we didn't do one last week. Or last stream, sorry.
Cool.
Great. Yeah. So, What's we're working on? Yeah, so this week is good because we have a pretty comprehensive preview of update 24, and just to sort of reiterate the roadmap, what's moving forward. So last time we had a reasonably big update, and now we're entering the 2 updates that are going to follow from that, and we can start to. We're not going to talk too much about it, but just want to touch on it that a lot of the like larger type of updates or larger changes we probably won't see until June's update, update 26, and that's because we're changing a lot more than we usually change, and it's requiring lots of time to make some of these more, I'd say, like changes that are gonna really move the needle for the game, right? As opposed to just these smaller type of like incremental changes, right? But update 24, if everything goes well, we're gonna do a dev branch pretty quickly, and we want to get this out there by Thursday. So look out for that. And in terms of the first thing on the plate is going to be the Relic bus, transport bus. And this is a fun one. So this is going to be the next Relic vehicle that's going to be available in this next war. And, you know, one of the things about the Relic system is that it allows us to try things out that are usually not mission critical type of vehicles, things that aren't like, you know, players aren't necessarily like dying for. But concepts that we feel fit into the universe of Foxhole that we usually don't get a chance to work on. So relics is one way that we can work on these things, and we want to do a bus for like a long time because we felt like the idea of shuttling players, which we already see in the game right now, people do it with trucks. We thought it'd be cool to see what will happen if we actually had a bus, right? And we definitely don't see this as like, you know, again, we don't see this as, okay, this is going to fundamentally change something huge in the game, but we do think that the small things often matter as much as the big things. You know, it's not just all about the nitty gritty, you know, like the current like meta and like the balance of the game and, you know, all that stuff. Like sometimes you just need to throw in something there that is fun, right? And this vehicle holds up to 12 players. There's 2 seats at the front, and then the rest of the 10 passengers get in through the back, right? So this is definitely holding more players than any other vehicle in the game. So we're going to be interested in seeing how this gets used. Right?
Except when they break the bars or something.
Also, for everyone wondering, this isn't an April Fool's joke.
No, yeah, this is
like
real.
very serious.
This is
It's very good that we're announcing it one day after April Fool's because I think it's perfect.
Yeah.
But it's not a joke.
Yeah, this is totally serious.
And there is more to this bus, but you'll find out at some point later, right? Hopefully it'll be fun.
There's more to this one.
Yeah. There is more. So the next thing, here's just another in-game screenshot of the bus. And the next thing on here is gas mask filters, right? So this is something that has been talked about for a very long time. I think like probably for years now. And we want to do this to try to balance out a few things. One, we felt that your green ash was pretty much became useless once the war reached a certain point. And moreover, we felt like in turn, your green ash was very ineffective against things like tanks, right? And tanks is something that recently we've been hearing a lot that's been a bit too powerful. And so this is there to kind of like balance that back a bit. There's a couple of rules on how this is going to work. Basically, you have to have filters for gas in your inventory, much like your ammo. And when each filter is able to absorb a certain amount of damage, and once it's absorbed that amount of damage, then either it begins consuming the next filter or you start taking damage, right? So you can no longer be sort of this like invincible to gas type of character running around, just not even worrying about it. You got to worry about this now, and it's more important now than ever to make sure that your tanks are actually supported by troops on foot, right? So that's another change that's going to be seeing in this update. Next thing is the return of mines.
Oh, they're gonna go crazy about this.
Finally bring back mines. So we made some changes to this. And first of all, we said that, okay, let's just bite the bullet and say friendlies can see the mines, the enemy can't, but all infantry can see it, right? So both the enemy and friendlies can see it. And again, this is another measure to sort of balance back some of the imbalance that players have been voicing about things like tanks, right? Just kind of stomping over everything else, and also to reduce the amount of griefing. They will be visible when placed on roads as well. So these are the visibility rules that we're going to try out, and these can be easily tweaked. So if we feel like they're not useful enough, or they're still like too easy to spam, or some other issue with the balance, we can definitely change these moving forward. I mean, the good news is that they're back in the game now. So now that they're back in, we can there's room for us to like play around with these kind of settings, right? Yeah, so that's another thing that we can look forward to. And so the pill sunk, our good old friend, the shy box. It's going to be repurposed for now as the AT pillbox, and basically players were asking for more measures, early game specifically, defenses against armored vehicles, right? So this sunken pillbox now fires AT rifle shots, is early in the tech tree, and you don't need a sledgehammer to make these, right? You can just use your BMATs to make this new AT pillbox, and a bunch of characteristics in terms of how it fires has been changed. So it's not just like some rapid fire AT rifle machine. It's actually balanced. So it's still, I would say overall, not as effective as a gun turret in dealing with things like tanks. But I think with things like half tracks and like armored cars, it could be pretty effective in dealing with those. And with things like tanks, on its own, it might not be enough, but we feel like you'd at least be able to like seriously slow down things like tanks and just sort of like mitigate their overall effectiveness. So that's another change coming.
And to clarify something, these aren't going to act like a shy box did. It's not going to go into the ground, or is it?
It definitely is going to go into the ground.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make that clarification.
This is cool. It's a quality of life improvement. So the RPG now, the old UI that's in the game right now, you can't tell when the shot is going to end, or at least it's very hard to tell. So there's a lot of like missed shots. So we changed the aiming indicator to look like the indicator that's shown when you throw a grenade. So it does it's a couple things. Now it will actually show you where it's going to end, right? So you'll no longer have the situations like, oh, I thought it was far enough and it wasn't, and my RPG exploded halfway through the air. And also in terms of showing the obstacles, it's just a lot more clear than what it used to be. Because the arc here is much more representative of where the actual rocket is going to fly to, right? So this should for the RPG users out there, this should be a little bit of a quality of life change there.
This seems like a bit magical, but actually, thinking about it, like if you were using this weapon, you'd probably have a pretty good sense of where it was going to go. generally in combat. So I think this makes a lot of sense. I think it being so like random before didn't make nearly as much sense as this does. So that's really cool. I'm glad to see. I didn't know about this one.
Cool. Another quality of life change, which some players asked for, was to bring back the old sorting method in the stockpile. So there's not much to say about this. We brought it back. So if the new sorting method was confusing, well,
There you
got
go.
the old trusty version. There you go. And another change is, as always, the art team is constantly improving the visuals of the game, which is a lot of times, sometimes we do this in a large, in like a large update. We sort of change a lot of things, like we did in the world revamp. That was, obviously sweeping changes. But a lot of it just kind of changes in each updates, and sometimes we don't even like document it. So I wanted to make sure that we are documenting all the changes so that you guys can actually see that the game is looking better over time. Because you take a screenshot from 2 years ago and you compare it to now, it's like a different game completely. At least we think so. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, so like a little bit about like why sometimes that happens, is we might be working on something else and figure something out, which is a pretty good case for the grass. Like as it turns out, like grass, especially in like a top-down game, has been a pretty difficult challenge to get right. We've gone through probably about 5 iterations on the grass, from the very first one that I did to like the many different versions we've seen in game, and tall grass has been through a bunch on its own. But we figured some stuff out that helped us get kind of the look we've always wanted, and I think we're getting closer and closer. I think we're as close as we've ever been now. So I'm weirdly, I know grass is like a weird thing, but it's like 90% of what's on the screen. So to me, I feel like it needs that sort of like attention to it. And the bridges were just really, really old.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it just
that's
didn't
the
look
bridge.
good anymore.
The bridge, and to be specific, we're not talking about the drawbridges, because those ones are slightly more updated.
They got updated though still.
Oh, they were also
one
updated.
of them did. Yeah, I remember reskinning one of them.
So these bridges were using this really old model from like 2 years ago, and now they're brought up to the visuals. So it's unified with kind of how all the other architecture looks like that's in the world. Like this gives me more of like a Westgate type of vibe, as opposed to like it being built like a completely different civilization, right?
I mean, yeah, the old bridge was one of the first assets in the game, so it made a lot of sense that it didn't fit as well. Like we hadn't ironed out some stuff, and I think the barbed wire was like a stand-in asset. It was like it was one of those leftover things. It was just like, we needed barbed wire. It was actually meant to just be a static asset. It wasn't really meant to be used by players. So it was kind of like a chunk in like a kit, right? And so it always kind of looked funky to me. So I'm so glad to see this new barbed wire.
No, I think a statement of that is that the old barbed wire was pretty unoptimized. It was like extremely heavy, with like so many polygons unnecessary and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, this is like a fraction of the polygons that the original barbed wire was.
Yeah, we like that asset really was not supposed to be used that way in a game.
Oh, there you go. You're gonna get some performance improvements when barbed wire's filling your screen.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's on the art side, and there is one more big bulk of this update, I would say, bunch of changes that I'm not going to talk about now, but they're going to be in the dev branch, is a long list of balance changes, right? So this is probably the biggest balance pass that we've done in like at least the last half year. So we tweaked the numbers on a whole bunch of vehicles, weapons, thingy majigs, everything has, not everything, but a lot of things have been touched, and all of it was, most of it was based on the feedback that we've been collecting from you guys, from the roundtable last week and through other channels. We made a bunch of these changes. I think there's a bunch of like structure buffs in there, because we know that the builders have been kind of calling for buildings to get a little bit of a buff, and since some of the bigger changes to buildings in general in Foxhole is coming later this year. For now, we're sort of like making sure that what we do have right now in the game is getting a little bit of a buff, right? So look to see that what those changes are in the release notes, and then this should be rolling to the game later this week, hopefully, right?
Nice.
So
It's really, really cool.
yeah, and there's a bunch of other stuff probably still in the release notes that we talked about. So as always, yeah.
Oh yeah, on a separate note, the Foxhole fan art contest is still going. The deadline for submitting your things are coming. It's coming soon. Well, at the end of this month, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's the 28th. I could be wrong on the date.
It's like right when I go on vacation.
Yeah, something like that. I think it's the 28th of this month. Check out the rules for the contest. There are some sweet prizes. The first place gets to actually work with us in something in the game, like something that we decide and together as being cool. We want to add either lore or something like that. We'll talk. Whoever is the winner, we'll talk and see what we can do together. That's the first prize, plus a bunch of other stuff like posters and pins and stuff like that. The rules of the contest are on the website there, on the URL that is right there. I'll post a link on the description on YouTube, and I'm sure that somebody is posting that link on the comments on Twitch right now. But yeah, it's really cool. It's open to any kinds of media, so let your creativity go crazy.
Yeah.
We are really excited for it. Really excited. Yeah, that's it. Don't forget to submit your stuff.
There was one more thing I wanted to say about update 24. The dev branch is going to be going live right after this stream.
Oh, okay.
Or very shortly after. So you're going to be able to jump right in and check out all those changes that we had talked about. So
nice.
Look out for
this
that.
might be the shortest, like, here's what we're doing. You can try it out. We've ever done.
Yeah, it just worked out that way.
All right, so we're going to do a Q&A. So the first question is by MRE Boy. What do you guys consider to be the most resource-intense part of making games? Art, textures, coding, etc.
Resource intensive?
My like gut feeling is specifically for Foxhole is like programming and level design.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it really depends. It really depends on the project. I guess the question was directed towards games in general, but
yeah.
I can speak to Foxhole. Definitely a technically heavy game, and lots of levels. Yeah, because here's the thing, the Unreal Engine. If you're to make a certain type of some games are really content heavy, like namely like a single player game, right?
Yeah.
Or a game with maybe like a PvE game, where you just run through a campaign. Like you need a lot of art throughput.
Yeah.
And level design throughput, and your programming team. It might not depend. Highly depends on the game. Everything is highly dependent, but relatively speaking, your programming team in a lot of these cases are not as big, right? In a game like Foxhole, where you have you have this very complex like online system that's always live, that has to deal with thousands of players connecting each day, and making sure all that is robust, and you're dealing with moderation issues. You're dealing with like connectivity issues. You're dealing with like operating this machine, right? So you're not only like building this thing and getting it out there, but you're also figuring out, how do I build the tools that allows me to let this machine live?
Yeah, I think
it's very engineering intensive, right?
Yeah, think about it this way. Like, as far as I know, every time that any game becomes or is multiplayer, the amount of coding necessary is like just just skyrockets.
Oh, yeah.
If you
Yeah.
think about a game like a fighting game, which is a completely different scenario, like a single player, like, or even two player, like local co-op fighting game, there's gonna be a lot of time and investment done in the gameplay aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like of making sure that every control is perfect, that the combo system works and connects and everything like that. And then you make that game multiplayer online.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Then like suddenly your coding that sure it was complicated,
Yeah.
but suddenly exponentially became more
Oh, yeah.
complicated because
Absolutely.
of the time difference. It's not a
I mean, even a game like Street Fighter, that would be primarily design and art heavy, because those two things are so hand in hand. You can't you can't even have a character attack with that without art involved, like, and timing and frame counts and all that stuff is so precise that it's an incredible amount of work. The moment you then add like multiplayer, then it's like, okay, now how do we predict an attack for the opposing? Like, then everything is multiplied exponentially. So
it's exponential.
Here's another point that I want to make is the main bottleneck is different at various points in the project, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes the programming team is just like completely bottlenecked, and there's a million things to resolve, and the art team is not as busy. And there's other times, like the world revamp, where it's like, oh my gosh, we need more people on the art team because there's just so much content to be made. So there's also these like, it's not a constant, right? It depends on the time too, right?
That's why I think that the person that has one of the most demanding jobs in the office is whoever does the scheduling of like who is working on what, because that is a goddamn nightmare. Like different people working on different features at different stages of completion, at different complexities, and it varies from game to game. Basically, that's a short answer.
a lot of people talking about Weather Expanse being sort of like oppressive and like foggy, and like all I will say about that is like it's supposed to be oppressive. Like if it's oppressive, then it's working and like great.
It's oppressive and what?
Like foggy.
Foggy. Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you know, there was a time when the fog was broken, and like Mark was like, "What happened to the fog and Weather Expanse? We need to get that working again." And so, like, I have a feeling it's working as intended. Especially, you know, it helps having some regions that sort of balance some of the more like open regions in the south. Stuff like that is, you know, it's flavor, but it's also like it does kind of add a little bit to the balance. So like, I know it's oppressive, but like that's kind of also the world that it's set in. So I'm kind of cool with it. So there's a lot of questions, and they all have a lot of different sort of like focuses. So I'm going to ask this question because I think it might have an interesting sort of answer, Mark. Will the port bases be removed from island maps? Can we get Fisherman's Row instead of Tempest this war?
Can we get Fisherman's Row instead of
Tempest? What does that mean?
They're all connected.
Everything's connected.
Maybe you mean like as a starting? Like no, but they're
All those maps. Do they not all have port bases?
They do.
Yeah. So I'm not really too sure now. But what about the idea of getting them removed? Let's talk about that for a second. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's actually something we've been talking about a lot recently, and I think it's something that we still want to do, or at least we haven't like given up on that. And every time we come around to tackle it, then we sort of realize, okay, it's going to bring about some more problems. How do we solve these problems? And then those solutions, each in their own, have a couple of their own problems, and it'd be just turned into a spider web of problems. And then we come back around and be like, okay, well, is it worth it to even worry about that right now? And then usually the answer is no. But I think that we'd like to do that, but it's just, for those of you guys who have been around for long enough, it's like strictly there to manage your population and your queues and things like that, so things don't become too painful when one side is winning. And have you pushed back, you don't end up in this situation where half your player population is completely frustrated, right? Which will happen if we just suddenly pull the plug on those, right? So
So the answer is no. Maybe
not
not
for
for
now,
now.
right? Yeah.
So I'm just reading more stuff about Weathered Expanse. Just so you guys, is there not a UI marker for bleeding now?
Yes, there is.
Yeah, so if you're bleeding, there's a UI marker. That's sort of answering like a weird like tandem like comment. I want to ask good questions. Will passengers in the relic bus be able to fire through the windows?
No.
No.
Thanks, HP. Totally. Padfoot asks, when will border walking be fixed?
Border walking.
Border walking.
I thought we mostly addressed that.
Okay, what is the exact problem that you're asking? Because
So I'm assuming it means like hiding in the safe zones of the border to actually like bypass a lot of defenses, or just like partisan round maps.
you mean that's a problem? The fact that you can bypass defenses? I don't know if that's a problem per se, right?
Well, I think the issue.
What?
I think the issue.
I'm confused on the question, to be honest.
Yeah. So the history of this is there was an issue previously of players hugging the no build zone to walk around, right? Your defenses, right? So the thing I have to say about that is that if there's a feeling that that's a problem, then there's another problem behind that problem, which is that people are locking down the borders, because that's something that we absolutely are fighting against. And if that's working to some degree, locking down, then we're going to break it, because and this is not something that we're passionate about because we hate people building walls. It's because the border lockdown is very bad for player population control and things like queues. Is that the battle needs to be pushed into the region, and we want players to be building their defenses around their towns, not building a wall at the border. That's actually that's why we implemented the no build zone, and that's why we implemented the fast decay zone. And if people are still doing it, we're gonna have to implement some third layer. I don't know what it'd be, but basically whatever it takes to
There's
obliterate
earthquakes
at the border to destroy any defenses. But to sort of understand our mindset there is that we don't want there's a problem behind that problem, and if you feel compelled to want to stop people from crossing at that point, then maybe there's another issue that we need to fix, right? Yeah.
Incentivizing a different behavior instead of
incentivizing a different behavior, and that's on us to figure that part out, right? But we definitely don't want people locking down the borders.
The only reason either of the things happen that we're talking about is simply because there isn't seamless travel, and so it's always skirting the balance between those two sort of things. Tovarish Ivan asks, is there a major rework of resistance mode incoming? And I find that an interesting question since it just launched. So,
to be fair to the question, it launched, but it pretty much was like a bare bones thing that didn't have anything to go in there. So
that's why I think
it's it's definitely a valid question. I think that's something that we're going to be chipping away at over time. I actually started a Reddit thread on that this morning because I really want to hear more about what you guys wanted to see from it. But the story there is we need to get to the point where we were only managing one world, right? And I think in the future, in not too distant future, we're going to be able to talk about why that is. And so we came up, and we also knew all along that we want to stop dealing with this skirmish mode thing, because it really is not in the spirit of the game. You sort of get broken out into this whole other like game mode that is not a persistent world, and it's kind of weird. So we kind of said, okay, well, since we have to do this so we can work on this other stuff, and this is where we want to go regardless in the future, let's just do it now. Now the downside to that, which I think a lot of you guys saw, is that there's not that much special stuff. There's nothing too much special about it right now, right? And that's fair. I think we could have done a better job in trying to message that to you guys. But now that it is there, we're able to work on some of this cool new stuff that we'll be talking about in the coming months. And in the background, we'll be kind of like hopefully chipping away at it. And we'd like to hear your feedback actually about what you guys want to see out of this mode, right? Because another thing is that we also want to be able to rely on resistance phase so that we don't always have to immediately start the next war. So that it's not like this weird like panic like we're in right now, almost like oh, the war's over, we better ship this next update, and let's just cancel all the stuff we want to put in it so that we can speed up this update. It's a really awkward way to do like development, but it's a unique problem to Foxhole, right? Because in every other persistent war game, you can't end the war, right? But this is a game where you can end the war, so we have this unique problem, right?
And that's a big deal. And I think it also helps to make the wars special when they start, if they're not just repeating.
Yeah. So we got to work to figure out how we can make this transition period still interesting, so that the game isn't like, that it's still more like active during this period, and while still allow us to have wars that end. Because I think we can all agree that wars would suck if they never ended, right?
So to definitively answer the question, is like a rework coming? Like, this is just the beginning
of the work.
Of the work. Like, as with a lot of stuff in Foxhole, like, the first implementation isn't the last. So
I think in this case, though, it's like barely even a first implementation.
Yeah, it's there.
It's like scaffolding.
So a better answer would be for the question, will it change? And the answer is yes, as we continue to develop that feature.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got two really good questions.
And one bad one?
And then that's it. So 600 people asked if we will get a naval expansion soon with bigger ships, oil rigs, naval CVs, and more choices for the naval aspect of the game.
100 people asked that.
600, I said.
600
And I also say this question gets asked to me personally on Discord and on every dev stream, and anytime I do a roundtable.
Really?
This is a constant question.
Well, how many times do we have a question if we're going to have a naval update? Almost every dev stream, at least.
Trains
Really?
and naval, like those are the two.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
so
I
let's
mean, we had a naval update last year at this last shy of a year.
So like 3 more years into the next one?
We've had a naval update every year.
maybe
right?
if we get 600 more people, we'll have another one this year. So what's your thoughts on that, Mark?
There's
one last thing before
yeah.
you start. This is the reason I wanted to ask this question, because it comes up so frequently. I want a definitive answer.
No, I mean, people don't ask it to me.
So you better not.
No, there's no specific big naval update planned, but there's naval content planned, and I can't wait to show you guys update 26. All I gotta say.
Oh,
Matt knows what I'm talking about, and it's gonna be cool.
I mean, it might have an impact on naval, maybe.
Oh, I think it has a huge impact on naval.
But yeah, I think we put a lot of attention onto water vehicles.
Okay. To give you something less vague, right? I think we are gonna focus. I think there will be some substantial features regarding logistics over water, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you guys that. That's a solid.
it's a solid maybe instead of a wishy-washy maybe.
Of all the wishy-washy answers I've given this stream, I'll give you that one half wishy-washy answer.
Water is a major part of the game. we made it into a major part of the game. Like we said, we've had 2 naval updates, like big naval updates. So I think they're gonna. It's like we're gonna put a lot of effort into it. So
Yeah, I don't think the naval part of the game will ever overshadow the ground
No,
part,
no.
but particularly with like the changes that we made with integrating the things into the one world, in which like now we have the islands connected and stuff like that, it makes more sense that we will have to develop that a little bit more. Yeah.
Right.
Dallum Dealer. No, that's not the right person. Darth Dog. I was like, wait, no, I thought it was a Star Wars thing. Darth Dog asks, do you guys think eventually we'll be able to make all mainland servers into one so there are no travel regions? This is another one that I feel like, you know, anytime we talk about the borders, just make it one.
Just stream it in.
Can we talk for a minute about why that's a very difficult challenge? And why it isn't just as simple as like turn them off.
Yeah. So that's I can talk about this topic all day because it's like an intense area of research at Clapfoot. It's that fundamentally Foxhole is using the Unreal Engine to do its simulation, right?
Yes.
And if you look at Fortnite, they support 100 players, and they're probably one of the most, if not the most, optimized game using this engine, right? We've been able to stretch our servers up to like about 160 players now, with reasonable performance. Now, if you remove the borders, that means that everybody can go to one region, right? So all 1,000 people, like just think what happens when we have a player spike and there's like 1,000 plus players. They all go to one server. What's going to happen, right? Is that the game will be completely unplayable. That's why in a game like EVE Online, when they have those 1,000 ship battles, everybody goes to this one place in EVE, this one star system or like whatever it is, and they reduce the speed of the simulation down to
game
like
itself slows down.
the frame rate slows down to like a slideshow or even worse, so that the server can have enough processing power to actually continue the simulation, right? But Foxhole is a real-time game, and we can't just suddenly like say, okay, well now everyone's game has like 2 seconds of lag, right? Like you shoot and 2 seconds later your shot comes out. That's what will happen if we just did it that way, right? And there's a lot of technologies out there right now that are claiming things like, oh, we support this giant seamless world and you can just do whatever you want. But I won't get too far into it. But in a lot of those cases, they're very good at supporting large worlds where everyone is spread out, right? But if they ever have a case where everybody goes to one place in the world, I think they'd have a lot of problems as well, right? So going back to what we're doing about this problem is a couple of things. One of these things is that we want to try to like alleviate as much as possible this feeling like they are separate. And you know, it's something I'm not going to get too much into now, but we are doing a lot of work to make things, to bring the world together so that even though these regions for now are still separated, everything else besides actually being in the region feels like it's not separated, right? So you can take that and theorize what that means, but we're definitely making progress there. And then on the other hand of this, we are working. We have like an R&D team that is working on completely new technology that will allow the 1,000 players to exist in one place, right? And that's something that is more like early technology.
It's like it's going to be long term. It's a long play, not.
That's a long play. That's a long play for us as a studio, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about. I'm actually really excited to talk to you guys about that tech.
We did a little write up on a blog once, right? Just showing.
We did a little bit,
some
yeah,
of the capsules.
yeah, and I'm hoping that later this year we'll have something more cool to show. But it, that's still more on the technology side. So I hope that helps. But if you ever have any questions about this topic, I'm excited to talk about it because this is like a big area of research for us. And you guys know, like
We talk a lot about this.
we talk a lot about this. Yeah.
We want, like, if it was as easy as flipping the switch, we'd have done it already.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't want Foxhole to be one seamless world. In fact, we try to do everything we can to alleviate that. And I think that's the thing to remember is, like, as soon as we're able to, it'll be something that we do.
And also keep in mind that every single one of the solutions that are out there, level streaming using a certain engine or a certain thing to use,
They're designed for different games.
They're designed for different games, and we did look into them. I think that, like, not everything in this game we can say with 100% sure that, like, we exhausted our options.
No, absolutely not.
But I think that in regards to multiplayer and how to handle thousands of players on a live game that is real time, I think we did our homework pretty well. Because it's something that we really do care a lot about.
Exactly. And
that we do spend a lot of time researching.
And the one thing that, I do want to stress this, that, when you guys go home to do your homework, there's a lot of stuff out there that's claiming a lot of wild things. But if you inspect it closer, right?
We don't want to say.
Like, we're not going to name names or nothing, but like it's all I have to say is this: supporting something that resembles a battle of 1,000 people all in one place, I don't think that is with gameplay that is complex. So not just like things flying around where there's no real gameplay behind it, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's a different story too. Like if you're just kind of these objects flying around and maybe doing some basic interaction. That's very different from a full-fledged game like Foxhole.
In which, like, you have to know which person, how many bullets they're shooting in.
There's physics, you're climbing over things, you have like an inventory, you're dropping items, you're healing your this is a whole different ballgame, right? So this is an interesting topic. So.
Yeah, when stuff is like turn-based, like World of Warcraft, which is turn-based, it does help to mask a lot of that stuff that you don't see. And there was one follow-up. There was one more thing I wanted to bring up. Sorry, go on?
Yeah, no, I just glanced and I saw that Dark Dog also mentions, like, he thought it was like, I thought it was a hardware problem, not a engine problem. It's kind of like a little bit of both as well. Mm-hmm. It's not just that, because let's say you had a server that could process like thousands and thousands more processes that they could right now. It was like, technically it's also a hardware limitation, right? It's a little bit of both.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of both. We actually pay probably 3 times more for our servers just to squeeze out that last bit of performance.
Yeah,
that gives us like
better servers.
That last bit of extra players, because your average servers that run, if Foxhole was just kind of like a run-of-the-mill, like first-person shooter multiplayer, like typical like deathmatch game or something, we'd be paying much less for servers. But because we're trying to push the limit, we actually pay a lot more for the servers just to push the envelope on that. So it's like, as you say, HB, it's like multiple vectors. Like you fight some of it by buying more expensive servers, right? You try to optimize your code, and then you have like a bag of tricks to sort of like further do more of that, right? So
game development is all just like magic. It's all sleight of hand. Really,
it's all trade-offs.
Yeah, it really is.
So Hinkle McGringle, I think is who it was, said, why don't we make smaller maps that are like more smaller maps, so that we can have more of the sense of breadth. Right.
Yeah.
And that was something we have talked about.
I mean, that's an interesting.
It is a cool trade-off.
See, I'm glad to hear that question, because now you're starting to think about how we think.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Like I'll say this: your question is on the correct line of thinking. Right? Yeah.
We've had that exact conversation. Yeah. That's how correct it is. So that's not to say that's what we're doing, but it is like something we have considered, and it does make a lot of logical sense considering the problem. So anyway, This was an interesting dev stream. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was great. I think questions were very good.
It was fun. I love talking about tech.
I tried to find like good questions this
Overtime.
time.
Yeah.
This is why I didn't answer questions about like uniforms or something because
Right.
like
Check the
we've
FAQ.
asked them enough. But yeah, so let's wrap it up today, and check later today for Dev Branch. That should be coming very soon, like right after the dev stream, and there'll be a new patch out this week, and if all goes well, and yeah, some exciting stuff. Get in your bus and go somewhere. Go somewhere foxy. All right, that's it. No, we can't. We have to end it on that because now
you got ahead of yourself. What can I say?
YouTube, right? I forgot.
Yeah, if you guys watching this on YouTube, first of all, join our Discord, join the community so you can ask questions there. If you don't catch us on Twitch every other week on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. EST, and join the fan art contest. It's gonna be really cool. I think that one of the prizes are these pins, right?
Yep, I think so.
I'm pretty sure.
Don't quote us on it. Go look at
I'm
the contest.
not 100% sure, but I think that's the one way you can get the pins because somebody I think asked that for me some time ago. Anyway, thank you very much. Stay foxy.
Oh, you just